now we say, yeah, count these up, count these up, whatever we say. But yeah, they have advisories against them, which is a real shame because it looks really nice. But you can't see chemical and biological pollution in the shell.
I'm just wondering, what drew you? I mean, I see you as in your writing as a strong environmentalist. Was that always the way it was in your life? Was it something that drew you to that, or what? Why, such a strong passion around this?
I could say I've lived too long. You start out, and I guess each generation starts out, looks around and says, this is how the world is, not knowing what the world is like, and then our parents and grandparents tell us when I was young, I said, oh, please, not again, I don't want to hear this story again. But I grew up in when I was young, I was taken to the mountains and to the seaside, and I grew up in a world that, because of economic reasons, was still fairly unpolluted, because it's like Cuba, they just didn't have the money to develop heavy, horrible industry that pushes nations ahead and is a sign of progress and so on, and has its good side, obviously, as we know. So I took a lot of stuff for granted. That was the world, and it was going to stay that way. And as I got older, I became a bird watcher. I mean, I always watched birds, but I didn't know what I was looking at. And I'm not one of these crazies who has a life list and has to check off everything. But I kind of like to know what the birds are. I have a friend, and we went on a walk in a park in Seattle. He's in his 80s, and I'd say, I don't recognize this plant. This is not something I'm familiar with, because I'm from the Midwest. And he'd say, I never enter into conversations with these plants, so I don't feel it necessary to know their names. But for me, I feel more kinship with trees and plants and birds if I know who they are more intimately. So I know their names. I know what their song sounds like. Maybe if I'm lucky, that sort of thing. So I started watching birds, and then I started watching the birds disappear. And that's a phenomenon that, I'm old, but it's in geological time. It's nothing. That's really a rapid decline, if I can notice it in my lifetime. And then these advisories: don't swim, don't do the red tide in the Atlantic. Manatees found in Buzzards Bay. Ridiculous things like that are happening because there is climate change, and it's really altering the way that we look at things. And then, of course, we manufacture disasters like the thing in the Gulf that I can't even bear to think about so much. Oh, it's all gone, by the way. There's no oil there. So that, and I guess my affinity, because I did want to, I started out as a person who was going to be a biologist.
Yeah, understand.
And I veered in a different direction.
Dodge the rat.
Dodge the rat, that's it. Frozen yet. That would have hurt.
Could have frozen the thing.
Yes.
You're talking about the behavior maps, but I was wondering if you thought about or maybe written any unpublished material dealing with the pre-modern maps of like the medieval map movies, where we don't have our lines to promote traits, but rather the imaginary beings and the historical and biblical beings that are meant to promote spiritual content population rather than trade and invasion?
Well, this is the work that I'm doing now, that I'm doing a lot of research on those early maps. In fact, I'm going to Washington at the end of the month to look at the Library of Congress has a big collection of pre-Mercatorian Revolution maps. So I'm going to be looking at those to get that kind of inspiration. Yeah. And I have some books, of course, with some reproductions of ancient maps, but it would be really cool to see them, see their actual presence. Again, you can get this on the internet, but no, I want to actually be in the same room with maps.
The lighting's really bad.
Okay, well, I'll be warned then. They told me I could take photographs. So.
What's your pre-printing map? Do you focus on a certain area, or is it just the one that inspired you?
Who knows what I'll find when I go there and look at them. Hard to tell. I try to reproduce a map, an early map, on one of a pot that I made. Of course, the glazes, you can never, that's an unpredictable craft. Anyway, it has a little, not a little, it's actually a huge head compared to the map. The god of wind, it's not Aeolus necessarily, but it's one of the other gods because they have several of them in different directions, blowing out the wind, and you can see that. And it's a head with wings, and arrows showing movement of air coming out of it. It's got little mountains on it, like little triangles sticking out, and it's got these things that are supposed to look like whales, but they're more like dragons that are floating on the surface of the water. So it's very cool. It's really very cool. So I'm hoping to find lots of moments like that of interesting stuff. And they're people too. Some of them are sort of, I think the attempt of the map maker to show what anthropological avant la lettre authenticity. These are people from the Andes, the way that they dress, and little things that are supposed to look like llamas. That's interesting, but they also have things with, maps with people who have dog heads and stuff like that. So but they're never empty. They're never empty. The astonishing thing to me from then to now is that we have these maps that have been wiped away, clean. They're only the imaginary lines, and those are the only ones that we actually have absolute faith in. And there's a ritual, as I found out in my other work about passing the equator, that began as soon as people realized there was an equator. And ships that pass the equator go through this really. But what's the equator? It's an imaginary line. And it immediately, we do cross the hemispheres, and the sky looks different and all this stuff, and that's all fascinating. But the maps have lost any kind of connection. For instance, we don't have a map of, if you look at Wing Migration, the film, there's a site on the web where you can type in Wing Migration, and you get the migration patterns for a variety of birds. You put in bird whatever, and it shows you the migration path. But we don't have maps showing that. And I'm thinking, why? Why is that not important? Or the great migrations of whales and of turtles and of tortoises and various other animals and wildebeest that we are always interfering with. And you hear all the time about planes and birds. And the people in the Smithsonian are doing some interesting work. The ornithologists there, they go out and they pick up